So you're listening to The Frequency, 104.9. I'm Silas Thorne, and I've been waiting for you. If you're hearing this, then you're one of them now. A night listener. We don't find The Frequency by accident. So night listeners, leave your mark. Tell me where you're listening from. City, country, or somewhere you shouldn't be awake in. I like to know how far my voice reaches. Get comfortable. Turn off that lamp. The dark is friendlier than you think. Usually. So tonight, I want to tell you about a boy named Lee, 17 years old, brown eyes, fast legs, the kind of kid who sat in the back of every classroom, every room, every situation, always positioned near the exit, always with one foot already out the door. Lee had a gift, you see. He could disappear. Not literally, not yet. But when his parents started arguing downstairs, and they argued a lot, Lee's eyes would go somewhere else entirely, somewhere far and blank and quiet. And then, before anyone even noticed, he'd be out his bedroom window and gone, moving through the suburban streets like smoke, like fog, like something that was never quite there to begin with. No footsteps, no sound, just Lee slipping between the streetlights. He told himself it was running, exercise, fresh air. It wasn't running, my dear listeners, but we'll get to that. The first night it happened, the other thing, I mean, Lee was deep in Morrow Park. You know the one. Everybody knows the one. The park you cut through in daylight and avoid after dark. The one with the trees that grow just a little too close together. He'd stopped to catch his breath. The mist was low. The kind of mist that sits at knee height and minds its own business. And then, something moved at the corner of his left eye. Just a flicker, a thin, dark distortion, like a smear on a photograph. Something crouching behind one of those too close together trees. Lee spun around. Of course, just bark and shadow and the sound of his own heartbeat. He told himself it was the adrenaline. Tricks of the eye. You know how it is, out there in the dark, when your brain starts filling in the gaps with things. You ran home. But here's the thing about that feeling, that cold, creeping certainty that something is there, just outside the frame of your vision. It doesn't go away just because you run from it. Weeks passed. Lee kept running. Of course he did. That's what Lee did. His parents called, his friends texted, his teachers asked questions with concerned eyebrows. Lee faded, slipped sideways, disappeared. And the thing in his periphery? It kept pace. That's what started to really unravel him, night listeners. Not that something was following him. It was the distance. It never got closer, never fell behind. It matched him, stride for stride, turn for turn, always occupying that thin sliver of vision just to the left of wherever he was looking, on rooftops, in alleyways, reflected darkly in shop windows. The millisecond his gaze moved to find it, gone. Like it knew, like it was playing. If you can feel it too, that quiet thing just outside your vision, leave a signal. Night listeners always do. He didn't tell anyone. Who would you even call for something like that? Months went by. Lee stopped looking like Lee. He looked like a sketch of Lee. A rough draft. The bones of his face sat too close to the surface. His eyes had gone somewhere that his body hadn't caught up with yet. His own shadow started behaving strangely. You ever notice your shadow on the pavement? How it moves when you move, arrives when you arrive? Lee's shadow started arriving first, just a half-second early. Just enough that if you were watching carefully, and Lee was always watching carefully now, You'd see the shadow of a boy fall across the ground, and then Lee appear to fill it in, like something was wearing him as a costume. And in mirrors, in the corner of his reflection, there was a shape, skeletal, too many joints in all the wrong places. A long, angular skull like something from a fever dream. It crouched at the very edge of the glass, and the instant Lee's eyes found it, his own hollow, terrified face looked back. Just him. Just his reflection. Sure, night listeners. There was one night, a moonlit night, cobblestones slick with moss, the kind of night that belongs to nobody, when Lee finally stopped. He stopped running. He stood in the middle of the road, chest heaving, and he turned full circle, slowly, looking into every shadow between every tree. The shadows moved, not like wind moves things. They swirled and twisted and writhed, like something enormous was pressing itself against the inside of the dark, trying to get out. But the exact moment, Lee's eyes swept directly over them, still, silent, innocent. And then, like a gift or a warning, a single piece of darkness detached itself, drifted toward him, small as a snowflake, dark as the space between stars. It touched his chest and dissolved. Lee ran home and didn't leave his room for 3 days. That was a mistake. Running home, I mean. Because the thing was never chasing Lee. It was following his lead. Every time Lee ran, it learned something. Every time Lee went quiet instead of speaking, it grew. Every time he chose the window over the door, the silence over the word, the fog over the conversation, he was feeding it, building it, drip by drip by drip. The morning it finished came quietly. A clear, cool morning, sunlight just touching the window. The kind of morning that feels safe. Lee opened his eyes and couldn't move. Not a finger, not a toe. His body lay in his bed like a stone, like a cast, like something that was no longer entirely his. He looked toward the end of his bed, the whole terrible geometry of it, the long avian skull, the skeletal dark form, crouching on the mattress, its weight making the springs bow. And it was looking directly at him. In the deepest center of all that black, 2 cold lights kindled, like embers, like the last thing left burning in a room after everything else has gone dark. It didn't attack him, night listeners. It didn't need to. It simply leaned forward, and the cold of it spilled over the edge of the bed like water, like fog, like everything Lee had ever run from, and it poured into him. And Lee went inside. The thing about disappearing is that it takes practice. Lee had been practicing his whole life. So when his body stood up that morning, made breakfast, went to school, nobody noticed. Not right away. It was just Lee. Quiet Lee. Keeps to himself Lee. The other students kept their distance without knowing why. The teachers noticed he'd gotten very still. His parents were relieved he'd stopped slamming windows at 2 a.m. Inside, Lee was screaming, for a while. But with each day, each memory the entity consumed, the screaming got quieter. His first run, gone. His sister's laugh, gone. The smell of the kitchen on Sunday mornings, gone, gone, gone. The creature was eating him from the inside out and using the pieces to wear his face more comfortably. It's been a long time now since Lee was Lee. The thing that wears him stands at his bedroom window on nights like this one. It has his height, his frame, his face, though thinner now, sharper. Wrong in ways people can't quite explain. Inside the skull, in the deepest dark, one faint speck pulses. Cold. The last piece of Lee. No bigger than a cinder. And as it watches the night outside, that light pulses once, twice, and goes out. You're still here. Good. That means you're still you. For now. The funny thing about running from something is you have to know what you're running from. Lee never did. Maybe you will. Always on. Night listener, don't turn around too quickly after this ends. Some things don't like being caught looking. I'll be here when it's over.